Living with the Himalayan Masters by Swami Rama. My Master and the Prince Swami. My Master is known throughout India because of this historical event which I am going to relate. Apparently many Indian lawyers, judges, and other educated people already know of it. There was a young man named Bawa Sannyasi, who was the heir prince of Bawa, a state in Bengal. After his marriage, he spent most of the time with his wife in his luxurious mountain resort at Darjeeling. His wife was already in love with a doctor, and the two lovers conspired to poison the prince. The doctor started giving him cobra venom injections in very small doses. The prince was told the injections were vitamins. The doctor slowly increased the dosages, and one day, after 2 months, the prince was declared dead. A huge procession carried his body to a cremation spot situated on the edge of a mountain stream. At the point when the piles of wood had been ignited and the body placed over the fire, torrents of rain began to fall. Note, Darjeeling is noted for the highest rainfall in the world. The fire was extinguished by the torrents of rain, and the stream flooded over and swept the body away. 3 miles downstream from the cremation site, my master was staying in a cave with some of his student swamis. He was in the process of traveling from the foot mountains of Kinchinjunga to our cave in the Himalayas. Sorry, I'm stumbling over these words. They're a bit hard for me to pronounce. When he saw the body tied to the coffin cloth and bamboo sticks rushing down the stream towards him, he instructed his students to pull it out of the current and release it from the well-dried ropes. He said, "This man is not dead, but in a deep unconscious state without normal breath and pulsation. He is my disciple." They untied the ropes and brought the body before him. Within 2 hours, the prince recovered his normal senses, but he completely forgot his past. He became a disciple of my master and was later initiated as a renunciate. He lived with my master for 7 years. Then my master asked him to visit different places to meet other sages. He predicted that this Prince Swami would meet his sister and would recall his past. My master said, "There are going to be a lot of problems for us, so I had better leave for higher altitudes." He went to our ancestral cave in the Himalayas and stayed there for several years. After wandering several months in the plains and meeting many sages, one day the Prince Swami unknowingly went to his sister's house to beg alms, and she immediately recognized him. It took him 6 hours to remember everything from his past. I was young at the time and remember accurately the details of the whole incident as they were then reported. Influenced by the promptings of his family and remembering his past, the Prince Swami went to the court and claimed to be the Prince of Bawa. Numerous witnesses were called to testify for both sides of the case. During court proceedings, it was proven that the doctor had obtained snake venom from a laboratory in Bombay. It was proven beyond a doubt that the Swami was the prince who had been poisoned by his wife and her doctor boyfriend. The Prince Swami told how he had been declared dead, his body carried to the cremation site near Darjeeling, swept away by a flood, and then picked up by a master of the Himalayas and his disciples. My master did not go to court, but he sent 2 swamis to serve as witnesses. The case continued in the Calcutta court for several years and was one of the longest and largest cases tried in the history of Indian judiciary. The prince eventually regained possession of his property and wealth, but ironically, he died a year later. Through this case, my master became known all over the country, and people started searching for him. He has always avoided crowds and worked with only a chosen group of students to whom he provided constant and loving guidance. My master did not come into the limelight. Many times, the people of India wondered who this great sage was, but my master preferred to remain away from the crowds. He still prefers to remain unknown, and he says that the aspirant who genuinely wishes to follow the path of enlightenment should avoid crowds, publicity, and creating large followings. Name and fame are the greatest barriers and downfalls for a spiritual man. Even after renouncing worldly possessions, the desire to earn name and fame lurks in the unconscious mind. An aspirant should wash off this desire completely by dedicating his body, mind, and soul to the Lord, and by having no personal desires whatsoever. Such a sage can help, heal, and guide humanity, even from a quiet and isolated corner of the Himalayas. Serving humanity becomes an important part of the life of such sages. They do not expect anything from humanity, for they think that serving humanity is the expression of love for God. And the next section of this chapter is entitled Footprints of Delusion. Westerners have been hearing many stories about the existence of yetis, snowmen, and Shangri-La. Although these stories are based on fantasies and fallacies, curiosity mongers from the West are drawn by them and have tried to search the secret Himalayas. They are helped by the community of Sherpa porters, who traditionally train to climb the mountains and who earn their living by guiding these travelers to the various mountains of the Himalayas. These Sherpa guides have knowledge of the prominent mountain peaks and are very helpful in guiding the climbers and expeditioners, but they have no knowledge of the spiritual tradition of any part of the Himalayas. Many foreigners have gone to these mountains in search of Shangri-La, but Shangri-La does not exist in reality. The myth of Shangri-La is based on the existence of two ancient cave monasteries hidden in the Himalayas. These caves are described in our traditional scriptures and have a long heritage of meditation and spiritual practices. One is situated on the Mount of Kinchinjunga at the height of 14,000 feet, and the other, where I lived, is in the deep Himalayas on the borders of Tibet and Garhwal. This cave monastery accommodates many practitioners comfortably. It is situated at a height between 11,500 and 12,000 feet above sea level. Very few people have been to this place. This monastery still exists, and there are many Sanskrit, Tibetan, and Sandhya Bhasha manuscripts preserved there. Foreigners to go to the Himalayas, and especially to Darjeeling, to climb the mountains with the help of Sherpas. During their expedition, they talk and think of Shangri-La and yetis. They carry cameras, tents, respirators, and tinned foods, and even litter some of the places in the Himalayas. But there is an unknown part of Himalayas. Those who are not prepared and who cling to their lives should not make an attempt to go there. I once met a rich man from the West, along with a team of Indians who were in search of snowmen. I could not convince them that the so-called yetis or snowmen did not exist, and they spent 4 months and $33,000 in search of them, but they returned to Delhi disappointed. This rich American wanted to film a yeti and even published a photograph of a Nepalese sadhu calling that sadhu a snowman. I also met a Western woman with 2 Sherpa guides in Sikkim. She was suffering from severe frostbite. She said her mission in life was to search for snowmen. She stayed in Darjeeling and made 3 attempts to find the snowman, but she never found one. Though I have been roving the Himalayas since my childhood, I have never met a snowman, but I have often heard stories about them. Excuse me. Grandmothers in the Himalayan villages tell such stories to their grandchildren. The story of the snowman is as ancient as the human mind's ability to fantasize. In the deep snows, one's vision becomes blurred, and white bears, which are rarely seen in the mountains, are mistaken for snowmen from a distance. These bears live high in the mountains and steal the food of expeditioners. They leave long footprints, which are similar to those of human beings. The word yeti, Y-E-T-I, is misused for snowman. It is a Sanskrit word which means a renunciate, an austere person, and is the name of a group of renunciate sadhus who belong to one of the orders of Shankaracharya. How strange to use this word for a snowman, yet yetis are human beings, not snowmen. The human mind remains under the influence of delusion until ignorance is completely dispelled. If there is no clarity of mind, the data that is gathered together from the external world is not perceived in a coordinated manner, and the clouded mind conceives a false vision. This is one of the modifications of the mind. Like fancy, symbol, and ideas, Maya is cosmic illusion, and avidya, A-V-I-D-Y-A, is individual ignorance, which comes from a lack of knowledge about objects and their nature. It is also an illusion. The story of Bigfoot is based on the belief of a fantasy and discoordinated perception. When a bear runs fast in the snow, climb upwards, or runs downwards. No, let me start that sentence over again. When a bear runs fast in the snow, climbs upwards, or runs downwards, the size of the foot of the bear looks very large. When I had a pet bear, I myself was surprised to see the big footprint it created. It is usually large and similar to a human foot. Alas, the world, under the influence of illusion, is still searching for the shadows and the large foot. I call it Himalaya Maya. I was born and I lived in these mountains, and I have nothing to say to those who are delighted to believe in these myths and who are still searching for something which never existed. God help those misguided souls. These are not the footprints of snowmen or yetis, but of delusion. And this next section is entitled, How We Live in the Caves. Those who are really committed to a life of austerity can live conveniently in certain parts of the Himalayas, where there are small caves to accommodate 4 to 5 people. There are also a few cave monasteries in the Himalayas in which the traditions are unbroken. The monastery in which I grew up is one of these. In our cave monastery, the tradition goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years, and it is well remembered. We have records of who the first masters were and how the tradition began. Our cave monastery is a natural cave with many compartments. Over the centuries, the rocks have been slowly carved away to enlarge it more and more so that it can accommodate many students. Generations of dwellers have worked to make the cave comfortable and peaceful, but it is not very modern. There are no bathrooms, kitchens, or other conveniences, and yet the monasteries functions very well. For light inside the cave, there is a stick of incense called dhop, D-H-O-O-P, which is made of herbs. When it burns, it gives light, and then it extinguishes, it gives fragrance. Dhop is crushed raw and then made 4 inches long and 1 inch thick. It burns well, and one can read the scriptures in its soothing light. When it is extinguished, it gives fragrance, and it works like incense. Branches of pine and deodaro trees are also useful for making good torches. They both have natural resin, which helps them burn without any difficulty. The cave is kept quite warm by the dhuni, a fire, D-H-O-O-N-I, a fire which is never extinguished. This fire is constantly supported by huge wooden logs and is regularly and vigilantly fed additional fuel. Sufficient fuel wood is collected in the summer for the winter use. Nutritious vegetables are also grown during the summer on the banks of the nearby streams. Varieties of mushrooms and lingora and ogal, 2 common vegetables which grow wild, are also used here. There are several varieties of roots. 2 are called tarur, T-A-R-U-R, and genti, G-E-N-T-H-I. Others look and taste like sweet potatoes. In our cave, we live comfortably on barley, potatoes, wheat, gram, and corn, which is grown up to 6,500 feet in the mountain villages. Every village maintains a cottage industry, which produces high-quality wooden blankets, carpets, and warm cloth. A narrow, perennial stream of water flows from our mountain cave. During November and December, when the water freezes, we simply melt the snow. In other caves where I have lived, such as the cave in Manali, M-A-N-A-L-I, fresh water is not easily available. We would fetch water from a distance of 3 to 4 miles. There are certain hermitages where the masters still teach their students in the ancient manner. There, the teacher lives in the natural cave, and the disciples come from various places to study and practice with him. Most would-be students do not reach the caves. However, there is something about the Himalayas which protects the teachers from those who are merely curious or who are not prepared for the higher teachings. If one leaves his home and starts searching for a teacher only because of curiosity or emotional problems, he will not reach these higher elevations. He will not have the intense determination and drive required to go on to those places hidden deep in the Himalayas where the great sages dwell. Teaching is often done by demonstration and goes on at certain fixed times. The students are then asked to show their own progress by demonstrating their skills. Sometimes the teaching is done in silence, and when a certain level of attainment is reached, the teachers ask, "How will others learn from yogis if you spend your whole life in a cave?" Consequently, most of the students leave after a few years. It is important to make one's life creative and helpful, but before doing so, one should make contact with his own potentials deep within by disciplining himself and gaining control over his mind, speech, and action. If discipline, such as that taught in the cave monasteries, is practiced even for a few years, the flower of life will bloom forever. A person who has gained such self-mastery lives in the world and yet remains above it, unaffected by worldly fetters and problems. Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm going to read those last two sentences again because I really like them. If discipline, such as that taught in the cave monasteries, is practiced even for a few years, the flower of life will bloom forever. A person who has gained such self-mastery lives in the world and yet remains above it, unaffected by worldly fetters and problems. Oh, okay. So that concludes chapter 1. And chapter 2 is entitled The Master Teaches. The Master Teaches. Okay. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you'll join me there. Till soon.